Hey, so since you started taking art class, you've had to do tons of grids. You've done grids for drawings, grids for painting, grids on grids, grids with subgrids. You could probably grid in your sleep at this point. And I'm going to have you do one last type of grid, a distortion grid. You may have accidentally distorted a picture by putting a square grid on your source image and a rectangular grid on your paper, causing your picture to either be stretched or compressed. And this time we're going to do that on purpose. And you can do more than just stretch or compress your picture. You can do sort of the low-tech version of a swirl or bulge like you might get in various kind of iPad filters or Photoshop filters. You might also be familiar with some of the distortion that happens when you use popular apps like Snapchat. When you open Snapchat, you might notice a little lag where it superimposes this grid over your face.
Snapchat uses a face grid so that when I go into one of the filters, it can distort my picture.
Once Snapchat has the points on your face mapped out, it can move those points and it will distort your image. To get started, I took the picture that I wanted to distort and cropped it to a 3:4 ratio so it would fit on 9x12 paper. And then I put the 9x12 square grid on it, just like I'm starting any other gridded drawing project. Okay, so believe it or not, my house does not look like an art supply store. So what I have here is a 9x12 piece of paper, because that's the biggest paper I have on hand. If you guys have sketchbooks from previous years, you might have up to 11x14, which will give you some nice space to work with. I also do not have a ruler, so I have a tape measure. So I used a tape measure to mark off my 9x12 grid on here. Now, if I were going to do a normal grid, I would just use a straight edge to connect those lines and have everything straight and perfect. If you're going to do a stretch grid or a compression grid, where it is everything is equally spaced but lengthened or shortened, you might want to do something like this, but maybe have these closer together instead of, you might use only half of the sheet and then it would stretch your picture out this way really long and skinny, and you would match it up with straight edge. For mine, I want to distort just part of the picture, I think. So I'm going to do a normal grid and then some of the lines are going to start to wave. So I'll show that once I get it done. Okay, so I did my grid. Since I'm not just stretching or compressing, my paper is going to be the same dimensions, 3:4 ratio, as my source image. Most of my squares are just like normal grid because I like the idea of contrasting the distorted part with the realistic normal part instead of having everything distorted. But if you want to distort everything, you are certainly welcome to do that. I am not a videographer, obviously, so I don't have any fancy tricks to show you this and the source image on my phone at the same time. So you will just have to take my word for it for now that all of this stuff was like hair and sleeve, and then this was all like jacket. And this biggest distortion area right here is her eye on the right side of the image. So I did purposely choose my focal area and have the biggest distortion happen right there. So by starting by gridding your source image, you can select the areas that that you want to distort, if you're not distorting the whole thing by stretching it or making it wavy or whatever. So that's how I'm going to have you start this project. I'm going to have you select your image that you're going to distort, put a grid on it, and make your grid, your distortion grid, on paper. And our next B day is Friday. So I would like you to show me those things by Friday. Okay, so source image and grid by Friday.